I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we explore Dr. Slaton Live Reflective Storytelling, the crisis of self. Dr. Christopher Slaton unpacks groundbreaking research on how brain, body, and sense connections shape our sense of self and ability to thrive. His book, already a #1 new release and #2 bestseller on Amazon, offers a transformative look at self-actualization and the energy that governs our lives. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below the interview. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan, for having me. I appreciate being here.
It's my pleasure. Let's give the folks at home an overview of what your book, The Crisis of Self, is about.
So it starts off with human system science, which is a study of brain, body, and sense events. And when you talk about that, you're talking about the science of self, because you want to understand what's going on inside you. And then you go into the sense and receive path, which is the physics of the body and the neurophysics of the brain. So your sense path represents the body, and your receive path represents the brain. And you know your sensors are the connectors. So the brain is the body. And so when you talk about brain talk, you're talking about your inner voice, which is transforming as you become more informed, because the brain responds to external contact interaction. And so there's your reflection, because a state of mind is a fixed state from a previous experience. But when you open yourself up to moving through the receive path to the neurophysics of self, that sense of feel is what transforms the brain's body into an activity of reading and understanding self, because that information flow continues to move through you. So when we talk about reflective storytelling, we're talking about how you learn to process information, whether it's hurtful or whether it feels good. So pain and pleasure. And that's the complication, because when you're in crises, you think before you feel. Mm-hmm. And when you think before you feel, that's external, because the brain doesn't really receive the information flow, because you cut it off because of fear and anxiety with your state of mind. You must learn through understanding how you live to learn to experience self in relation to other people. Because that's the complexity, is that you're afraid because you have to interact. And interact, you're not sure of self and what's going to come out of you. Brain talk. Your inner voice is supposed to be in the lead of your body. So that's what I mean when I say that the brain is the body, because you want the brain to be in the lead of the contact. But that's where levels of awareness come in, and trust that your brain is fully functional. That's when we talk about the receive path, because the receive path transforms the information flow. So when you respond, that's forward feed, that's the brain's response. Now your inner voice has informed the brain, but now the brain is in the lead of the body. But that means that you're now moving through a sense of feel for how you think, reflect, and process emotion.
Yeah.
And that's brain, body, sense messaging.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, what are the practical implications of brain-body learning systems?
Well, first of all, you want to improve your sense and receive path functioning. Because people in crises have a problem. Like, take a teacher, for example. The teacher sending an instruction to a kid, and the kid is isolated because of what's happening outside the classroom. So the instruction does not get received. So then the response from the kid can be anything but what's preferred by the teacher to measure their actual participation and performance, or their consumption of the instruction. So sense path function is understanding your body. So that when you are dealing with a kid, you don't look at the body, you look at the body to read the brain, because the brain is the body. And if there's levels of fear and anxiety, you'll see it in their behavior response before they speak. For example, I've had kids whom I'm testing this on, and I'm sending an instruction to them. They just look at me like I never said anything to them. That fear and anxiety, and then the fact that they're hurt by something they can't move through, and that's what you want to do. You want to get them to move through the experience of self, because self is in crises. So you want to get them to experience self in relation to you. So you have to send that instruction through signs of care and then let them adjust, because that's the problem. Whatever happened, now it's happening to you, but you have to establish yourself as a caregiver in relation to that kid. So sense and receive path function teaching the kid about the body and how to respond more carefully to the instruction. Because what you want to do, you want to process the information flow from your instruction. But it's difficult because you have to give them that sense of, okay, it's okay.
Mhm.
They're not, he or she is not going to allow me to do this or do that. I'm not going to re-experience what happened to me last time. That's the complication with education. You can't treat a kid like you treat all other kids. You have to be able to read their performance in relation to the body and the brain. Because remember, the brain and body are interconnected. So when you see the anger and frustration coming at you, that's them saying you better back up, you better get away. That does not mean they are bad kids. That means that they're trying to get you to isolate and withdraw because you're trying to bring them out. They don't feel safe. So we're talking about sense and receive path processing. So I'll give it to you very simply. What I just explained was how contact stimulates a reaction from that kid. And the interaction is the process variable between the teacher and the kid's information flow. And the kid must learn to cooperate through that anxiety. Otherwise, they can't get through the next step, which is to participate in the actual processing and responding to the actual flow of that content. So what we're talking about is contact, interaction, cooperation, participation, and then performance. Because you can score performance based on how the kid moved through your contact, interacted with your instruction, and show signs of cooperation because you show signs of care. So they link care, cooperate. You give the kid care, and it doesn't happen overnight. We're talking about kids that are hurt. So you give them care and you see them evolve because they're beginning to understand you're different or it's a different environment. So there's a lot of things going into it, but the structure is contact, interaction, cooperation, participation through your sense of feel for self and the interaction with others, and then understand the environment. You have to cooperate. The kid has to know this is where I'm supposed to communicate academically. So, sense and receive path research to me is critical in solving the problem of the crisis of self. Because if you have problems thinking because you can't feel another person's contact, then you're not thinking at all. You're just reacting. But when you move from a sense to feel, now you're processing that contact interaction. And the person knows it because there's a level of focus that goes along with it. So the science of human system science is how do you sense, feel, and focus brain, body messaging?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about how your book can help readers manage the energy flows of their brain and body.
Wow. There's a lot of samples inside the book. Example would be you have forward feed and backward feed. And people talk about what happens on the front, but you have reflection on the front. So you're telling the person, well, forward feed is the brain, backward feed is the body sending information through the receive path. And you want to be able to experience that, so you have to show signs of cooperation. I just said it. So the middle link is you must cooperate in order to participate, even with yourself. If you're the person that's hurt and you're trying to get people to understand you, you want them to learn how to participate with you. So you have to cooperate with them. So teaching kids how to cooperate is key to information processing, because once they move through the cooperative level, that experience that blocked them, they move through. So there's a level of openness space being created for them to re-engage and understand. That's what I meant when I said that the teacher shows signs of care, because that kid will shift. And when they shift, you have to sustain that level of interaction and clarity in terms of how you're delivering a balanced approach that allows them to understand you're not talking to my body, you're talking to my brain. I mean, that's the learning part, is teaching kids how the brain actually functions, and it functions with signs of care. Even you and I, if I don't cooperate, then you can automatically assume I don't care about the interview. But when I cooperate, we're in agreement, and things change, and things that would not have been said are now said because of that level of clarity, so that the sense and receive path have a balanced approach. So that emotion that you may have been experienced is minimized, because you have feelings of thought constantly being brain. So that's that forward and backward feed. But these are examples that are inside the book. But the simplest one is understanding sense and receive path research. Because when you do that, you're talking about informing self, disciplining the body, and processing the information flow. And that's what you want to do. So what are we talking about? Reflective storytelling. The brain tells a story from the experience of self, others, and the environment. What you want is clarity and understanding what's happening to you. And that's why you do self-research in relation to understand sense and receive path functioning, because you want to know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong that impacts your ability to comprehend.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about breath of life experiences and the role that they play in self-actualization.
Well, inside the book, I'm familiar with working with children in crises, being that were subjected to drugs while in utero. And so, from that perspective, the crisis itself begins before, during, and after the breath of life. And the breath of life is critical, because if you come into the world and you're not touched accordingly, it shifts levels of anxiety, because now you are unfamiliar and you're trying to figure out, where am I, what's going, and you're already in pain because you're brand new. So the breath of life is that emotion. For the rest of that life, you're trying to figure out how to balance. So we talk about information flow. In the front of it is the sense path moving through that emotion. Because as you get into the age appropriate learning variables, what they're talking about is that emotional effect of the breath of life being neutralized by information flow to the brain, creating a knowledge base on understanding feelings of self, because those are self feelings that you're moving through. That's why I lean heavily on self-learning, which is brain learning. If you learn about self, you're going to learn about the brain, because the brain is the body, and the senses are the connectors to information flow. So when you have that contact, that interaction, you want clarity and understand. So if you lose an eye, telepathically, the rest of your human system responds instantly, because it is performance based, and you still want to understand what's happening to you. So these are the things that we're talking about inside the book, is how do you move and transition from one aspect of being in crises, because pain and suffering can go on the rest of your life. But how do you balance that out with thought and emotion? Well, that's why you teach them about the brain and the body, so they can begin to understand their states of mind. And their states of mind are products of the experience of informal influences, and then formal influences. We're talking about school. Informal influences, mom, dad, cousins, so forth and so on. That makes it complicated for a kid to balance academics and emotional flow. That's why a lot of kids have trouble in school, because home-based learning is entirely different from school-based interaction, and that's confusing, but that's emotion, and that's supposed to be thought, because school is about thinking. It's not about feeling, it's about thinking. So you are not taught how to feel. for self at home, it's hard to get through school because you got to already walk in a classroom understanding that you're going to feel this information flow. You're going to have a problem with the teacher because the teacher don't want you to feel the instruction. They just want you to react.
Yeah.
Okay, but when you do that, you want to know, okay, I gave the teacher my predicted response because scientifically, as you get into the school system, your sense of feel is what gets you into college because you're understanding how to move through the experience of multiple language systems that are all different because you have a sense of feel for the instruction. You see, and you don't want to lose that. You want to build upon it, but there's no communication between these two platforms. That's why inside the book, I talk about community-based learning, home, school, network, all these different language platforms that are associated with socialization that young people have to learn in order for them to successfully move into our economy. They have to know how to live in a home, learn in school, think in the neighborhood, and respond in the workplace. But all that's not going to happen if they're overwhelmed by family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets, and poverty. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about sensor and seed path, because you can live through it when you have a sense of, like Maslow said, when you have, like you were saying earlier when we were talking, when you have that sense of self-actualization working for you, you can become within those structures whatever you believe you can become because you've been formatted. You've been formatted for that experience.
It is such a powerful message. It is such an empowering book. We're talking today about Dr. Slaton Live Reflective Storytelling, The Crisis of Self. In the book, Dr. Slaton unpacks groundbreaking research on how brain, body, and sense connections shape our sense of self and ability to thrive. His book is already a #1 new release and a #2 bestseller on Amazon, and it offers a transformative look at self-actualization and the energy flows that govern our lives. It is a game changer. It is a life changer. You need this book. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. I hope I wasn't too enthusiastic because, anytime we get the opportunity to communicate, like you were saying, learning how to live is very, very critical, especially when you're upset. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out how do you move through the crisis of self. Yes, thank you. The book
Well, I think your passion
help.
is great. I think your compassion is great. I think your work to remove the roadblocks in people's lives that keep working as barriers against self-actualization is great because you're trying to empower people. And I think that's why your book is so successful. And I think that's why it's going to continue to be even more successful. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.